Welcome to today's episode of Magnus Mindset Podcast, where it's our mission to help you grow in the skills, knowledge, and relationships to help you live your best. I'm your host, Tim Balo, and if you haven't done so already, be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast episode. Welcome back, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about negative thoughts. Here's the bottom line with that. Here's the question you have to ask. What do you say when you talk to yourself? I got to tell you, this is one of those things that I really kind of struggle with. I have to work through. This is a great talk for me to do, just to remind myself, what do I say when I talk to myself? And I'm not talking about just the normal stuff like, hey, don't forget to pick up some milk. Hey, remember to go get the kids and remember the appointments that you have. We're talking about the ongoing self-talk. It's what you say to yourself over and over and over again. And like many of you, I find myself stuck in sometimes some ongoing negative loop. John Acuff, in his book called Soundtracks, and refers to them as sort of a playlist. It's those little sound bites that we constantly are playing over and over and over, our own little personal mixed tape. For instance, when we're sitting in traffic, it's just everybody is an idiot. Perhaps there's the self-talk in the morning where you just, even as you're getting ready for the morning, you're saying, I have way too much to do. There's not enough time in the day. I'm never going to get it all done. So you already have a negative mindset when you're starting your day. Perhaps at the end of the day, as you're laying there, I didn't get anything done. And so you evaluate your entire day on how productive you didn't feel that day. When it comes to your finances, you're always broke, right? This is the words that we say to ourselves. If we go through a breakup or we're having a relational rift sometimes, we just say, well, I guess I'm not lovable. If we make just a small mistake even, it doesn't have to be a large one, but we just come down to ourselves and so I am a total idiot. These are those little sound bites that we put as our personal mixtape that we play over and over and over again. And here's what I want to ask you is that, how do you talk to yourself? How do you hear you in your head? Because what you say to yourself matters more than you can imagine. There's an ancient Proverbs, it comes in the Bible, and it's in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23, says, be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts. Boy, there's such wisdom in that. Be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts. That word life right there, it refers to the inner person, the mind, the will, the heart, the understanding that you have. Now, in our world, in cognitive science and all these things, we actually have a law of cognition that has played this out. It shows us that what we think leads to how we believe. And how we believe will lead me to how I feel about things, the world, those around me. And then that in turn reflects in what I do, the actions that I then play out each and every day of my life. So your life is always moving in the direction of those strongest thoughts. So keep that in mind, that your life is always moving, but it's always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts. Dr. Paul David Tripp writes that no one is more influential in your life than you are, because no one talks to you more than you do. Oh, we have so much time in our own head, whether we're sitting in the office trying to get things done, whether we're sitting in the car. There's a lot of the downtime. You're laying there in bed, maybe in the morning. You're laying there in the bed at night. We have a lot of time on our hands that we seem to just play that soundtrack over and over and over again. And sometimes as you're talking to yourself, you're talking yourself into a life that you hate. Why? Because we have chronic negativity in this world, in this culture. There's a massive problem that's poisoning people's mental health. And it's not just it's a practical problem. It's a spiritual problem. It's an emotional problem. And it actually becomes a physical problem because as we are thinking, it begins to erode us actually internally. There's studies that show that as we have this negative bias in our mind, this chronic negativity, it actually increases cortisol levels, which is a stress hormone. Then while your body needs a certain level of cortisol, too much cortisol can not only make your body retain too much fat, but it can also be cancer causing as well. Here's the bottom line of today's discussion. We're going to unpack this a whole bunch more here in just a couple minutes, but I want you to know that your thoughts have incredible power. That's the first thing I want you to understand, that your thoughts have incredible power. But also, the second part of that is that you also have incredible power over your thoughts. You have the incredible power over your thoughts. So there are some things that we want to kind of talk about in this context of maybe negative thinking. And what we want to talk about is what scientists refer to as a negativity bias. Neuroscience shows that negative events in our lives, they imprint on our brains more quickly and linger longer than positive ones. Now, something to keep in mind with that. The negative events that we have are often things that we learn from. We learn from our failures. We learn from our hurts. When we were very young and we fell from a certain height, we knew that hurt. So that kind of told our bodies and our minds, okay, that's too high. When we touched the stove, when mom said, don't touch the stove, we learned not only that hot things hurt, but mom is right sometimes. So those negative events help us to learn in our world very, very quickly. However, those negative events, because they imprint so quickly and they linger so long, that it's difficult for us to kind of put our mindset into a positive mindset. I mean, you look at, though, in this world right now, for those of you who are obviously on social media, what do you see out there more? Do you see the positive things being mentioned? We love a good news story, but news stories only really want to make the things that are dramatic, because one of the things that they say in the news is that if it bleeds, it leads. So our social media, our news outlets, our basic television, all of those kinds of things are typically more negative than they are positive. And those are the things that we typically feed ourselves most every day. So here's what I want us to look at is that when it comes to this idea of this negative bias, we can have a great day, right? We can have a pretty much an overwhelmingly wonderful day, but we have one small moment, one negative event in the course of the day, and suddenly our entire day can be, because it's our thoughts, can be ruined. We could have a presentation that day, right? And we do that at school or at work, and we get multiple people compliment us and, hey, what a great presentation. They can really see you did your work, and I really got something out of that. But if we have one criticism from that, we end up focusing on the criticism, don't we? Do we focus on the compliments? Boy, that'd be great. But we don't. We focus on the criticism. I'm guilty of this myself, because we talk about that it takes 10 attaboys to make up for one oh crap. If you have a parent who is constantly being negative to you, that's terrible. But even when a parent is being positive, but if they say one remark, and you as a parent say one remark that's negative, it sticks longer. It locks in faster than any of the positives. So we have to be really careful about the kinds of things that we allow to pass through our filter and that we're putting out into the world as well. I just look around and I see that there's this chronic negativity that it sends us into really a constant state of fight or flight. This is why a lot of people are struggling with, say, panic attacks or anxiety attacks. Now, in a stressful situation, the brain releases that cortisol that we were talking about, which is really a good idea, because in that fight or flight, it helps the cortisol in our blood when there's a situation, helps us to be more alert, more focused. It helps us to be good until it's not. And that chronic negativity will always feel like we are in danger. So our mind then becomes governed by, you guessed it, fear. It's not just about winning. Now it's about running. It's about fear. And so we want to talk about how do we reverse these neural pathways that we're sort of forming in our own brain, because negativity, honestly, can become a habit. And we want to talk about how do we break that habit, just as we talked about in our earlier ones of how do we stop bad habits and how do we add positive habits. We look around and we see all the influences that come into sort of our negativity as a habit. So check your consumption. What is it that you are putting into your mind? The old adage that my mother used to teach me about garbage in, garbage out, that's one of those like computer programming things. What is the news that you consume? What are the shows that you watch? What's the music that you enjoy? When you're spending hours on social media, are you looking at the things that are sort of causing an emotional fight or flight response inside of you? People spend a lot of time on social media and it influences their thinking. We also spend a lot of time with other people. What are those people feeding into us? Do we hang out with people who see things on the positive side? Or are we hanging out with people who tend to see things more negatively and critically? And all of that is creating an inner script that directs our life. So, As a reminder, your thoughts have incredible power. But we also recognize that we have incredible power over our thoughts. So we're going to recognize where our most prone areas are to this negativity. And we cannot defeat what we don't define. So in that area, let's talk about some of the big boxes of negativity. These are coming from studies all over the place that have been done in cognitive neuroscience. There are 4 major boxes of negativity. And let's just talk about those briefly. Number 1, there's relational cynicism. We would define that as a general distrust for people and their motives. A general distrust for people and motives. So this relational cynicism is that idea that, all people are idiots. I can't trust anyone. Everyone's going to hurt me at some point. When we have that mindset, we become sort of a victim mindset, and that general cynicism, distrust of people, causes us to become negative in all of our relationships. Box number 2, negative filtering. Negative filtering. That is when we are able to see what's wrong. We overlook what's good, what's right, and we always assume the worst possible conclusion. I can tell you that as a parent, this is really quick and easy because it happens all the time when your kids are not home when they're supposed to be, right? We're like, oh no, my kid is dead in a ditch, right? That's what we jump to. They might just be a little bit late. They just missed, looking at their phone as to what time they were supposed to leave, where they were supposed to be. We get into this negative filtering and we jump to the worst possible conclusions immediately. Absolute thinking. It's called absolute thinking. Here's the idea behind that is that we polarize things. It's an all or nothing. It's an always or never. It's sort of like there is no gray area. Everything is all bad. If you make one mistake, then you're just dumb. If people disagree with you, you completely write them off. You know that you're right, and that's the line. So it's one side or the other, and there's no compromise in the middle. Box number 4 is blaming. Blaming is like the first one in relational cynicism. Blaming is believing that you're always the victim. You don't have any control, and life seems to just happen to you, and you can't do anything about it. So those are the 4 boxes that we're looking at for our negativity. And we find ourselves getting maybe jealous. We are constantly critical. We're discontented. We're always assuming the worst. We're really hard on other people, and we're especially hard on ourselves. But here's the question, even though we've seen those 4 boxes of negativity, and maybe you're already taking an inventory and taking a little personal check on what your thoughts look like, the question remains, can people shift in this negative thinking? There was a study that was done recently that had 2 different groups, and they were presented with a quote-unquote new surgical procedure. The exact same procedure was presented to one group as this is a 70% successful surgery. And would you consider having it? Well, of course, they were like, yes, that's 70% successful. That sounds great. The second group was presented as it has a 30% failure rate. Would you consider this surgery? And they said, absolutely not. So then they reframed that with each group. They presented to one group, the first group that was presented it as successful. Now they came back and they said, well, as a reminder, it is also, that means 30% failure rate. And they changed their minds. Well, if it has a 30% failure rate, no, I don't think I want to do it. The second group that they presented the failure rate first, but came back and said, oh, but it does have a 70% success rate. Those people did not change their mind. Changing from negative to positive doesn't happen accidentally or even naturally. There are animals in our world that are called ruminators. Some examples of that are cows, sheep, llamas. What does that mean? They will take a mouthful of grass, for instance, and they will chew it, and they will swallow it, and then they will regurgitate it. They will ruminate. They chew it again, and they swallow it again, and they bring it up again, and they swallow it again. Now, sometimes we do that negatively, where we just keep bringing up bad experiences and chewing on them again and again. But why do these ruminators have this particular biological function where they eat it, they bring it up, they chew on it, they swallow it again, they bring it? It's because their bodies are trying to get every bit of nutrition out of that. And here's what we want to focus on is let us be ruminators of not the negative, let us be ruminators of the positive. Bring up again and again those good things that we look for. Like, for instance, if you're acting like a sheep and you're going to have some daily affirmations, you're going to bring these things up each morning, every morning. You're going to say these things. Maybe for the next 30 days, you're going to find a mirror and you're going to confidently say, I'm going to give you 10. Let's just start off here. And maybe you want to jot these down, make a note of these. These are great things to have. These are sort of adjusted from John Acuff's book as well. But here's 10 affirmations or anthems that you might say as you ruminate each morning. Number 1, today is a brand new day, and tomorrow is too. Number 2, I've got a gift worth giving. Number 3, the only person standing in my way is me, and I quit doing that yesterday. Number 4, I am the CEO of me, and I'm the best boss. Number 5, winning is contagious, and when I help others win, I win too. Number 6, feeling uncomfortable is just a sign that my old comfort zone is having a hard time keeping up with me. Number 7, momentum is messy. Number 8, everything is always working out for me. Number 9, I am my biggest fan. And number 10, the best response to obstacles is to do it anyway. Here's the principle behind those affirmations as you ruminate on those each and every morning for maybe the next 30 days or continue to do it past those 30 days, is that you are filling your mind with the positive things and you're going to be fasting from those negative things. You are going to withdraw the negative news, the negative social media, the negative YouTube things, the negative friends, even those negative relationships, as you fill your mind with the positive. As I stated at the very beginning of this, that your thoughts have incredible power, and you have incredible power over those thoughts. Let's go back to those 4 boxes and put some positive things into those contexts. So in that area of relational cynicism, you might say instead, I'm going to get rid of bitterness and skepticism in my life. I'm going to choose to believe the best about others and be kind, compassionate, and loving. I will love and forgive others just as I am loved and forgiven by others. Maybe in that box of negative filtering, you might say this instead. I take every thought captive and I make it obedient to truth. Today I choose to think on what is good, what is right, what is true, what is helpful, what is honorable. In the box of absolute thinking, you might change your script in that. The playlist that you have, you might ruminate instead on, I will love and accept others. Rather than always being right, I will strive to always be loving. Rather than just to make a point, I will choose to make a difference. In humility, I choose to love others even above myself. And in that last box of blaming, you might choose to say each and every day, today I will own my choices and I will choose what is best because I am a warrior. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure that you share it with a friend. Again, remember to click subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the episodes of this podcast. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.